So today, make sure that you interact, make sure that you learn from each other. We have some excellent speakers. We have some from our own group. So make sure you spend time learning, talking, challenging yourself, thinking about what we're going to do within our own districts, because this year we're going to focus on retention. We've been working on bringing in diverse staff. Yes, in the middle of the most horrendous staffing shortage there's ever been. We're going to try to keep our staff. And we're not going to forget that we are still seeking diverse staff, no matter how difficult it may be. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming. And I'm really, really excited now to introduce our first guest speaker, Tanisha Davis, from the New Jersey Department of Education, who has been our friend. If you remember a few years ago, she was right here at the table. She brought her team, and that was the first time that we felt heard. Would you agree with me, CJPride? Wasn't it amazing?
Yeah.
She came, she listened, and all of a sudden we were like, did you see that law? That's what we said! It was like a minute later, and then Tanisha would actually call and say, Charity, can I talk to your group about this next thing? What does your group think? And she would come meet. And then there was a new law, so we got really pumped up by that. So we're thrilled that you're here, and we'd love for you to come up and tell us a little bit more about the great things you're doing.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Just a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to stay in contact with Charity. Really appreciate the partnership, appreciate the work that you all do, and it's just exciting how much our goals are aligned, and even excites me more as Charity talks about keeping diversity at the forefront during a time where you all are experiencing a lot of challenges in staffing schools, lots of challenges in retaining folks, but to know that we can do this work, that we can do both, that we can make sure that we are filling our classrooms with high quality educators while continuing to focus on diversifying the workforce. And that is, thank you, and that continues to be the focus of our work. And I think that there are lots and lots of things that we could continue to talk about and hope to continue to work together with your group. But did want to share just a little bit about the work that we've been doing in the diversity space, especially since the last time I was before this full group. And just excited because members of the group continue to engage, continue to reach out. I think there are a couple of you that reached out to be a part of some committee work that we're doing at the department in regards to diversifying the teacher workforce. So just appreciate your partnership and just want to share a little bit about the work that we're doing. And if there's anything that we can do that could be helpful and supportive, we want to continue to do that with you all. And our goals remain the same. So even in the midst of a pandemic and some staffing challenges, we are still committed to ensuring that all students have a diverse teacher workforce. And as you recall, we talked specifically about new and novice teacher workforce, because when we look at our overall teacher workforce and teacher population, we understand that this is a gradual shift and a gradual change, but we do know that our new and novice teacher workforce is slightly more diverse than our overall teacher workforce. So if we continue in that direction, we will see the shift as our teacher workforce grows when we're thinking of our new and novice teachers that are entering the classroom. And for us specifically, when we're talking about our goals around diversity, we are talking about ethnic and racial diversity based on the research that we hold dear. And then also making sure that all teachers are culturally responsive. So ensuring that there are opportunities in pre-service and in service to ensure culturally responsive practices for all teachers. Our theory of action continues to be our partnerships. We know that we cannot do this alone. We know that we can't regulate our way to a diverse teacher workforce, so it is important for us to engage with our stakeholders, so our preparation programs, our legislators, our county colleges, our school districts, and organizations like CJPride that are invested in this work to continue to implement promising practices around retention, preparation, as well as recruitment, and then also ensuring that we are implementing promising practices around culturally responsive pedagogy. And then we will see our goal come to fruition, that all of our students, regardless of race, will have opportunity and access to a diverse teacher workforce and also be in culturally responsive environments. So what I wanted to share, over the last few years, the state has been engaged in this work and specifically really funding a lot of grant projects around diversifying the teacher workforce. So we have some data now, we have best practices and some innovations that have come from our grantees over the years. So since 2018, we have been awarding grants to our educator preparation programs to partner with districts to implement some promising practices and innovations around diversifying the teacher workforce. So just want to share some of what has come out of the work of our grantees in the space of recruitment, preparation, and retention, and some of the lessons that they've learned, and then also just talk about some of the work that we hope to engage in over the next year. So our grantees have been colleges and universities. So over the years, we've granted funding to Relay Graduate School of Education, Montclair State University, New Jersey City University, Rutgers twice, so Rutgers alternate route, as well as Rutgers Graduate School of Education. And the work that they've done has kind of given us some perspective on some innovations that have been helpful in the work that they've been doing and helping them to meet their goals as well, in partnership with school districts across the state. So some of the recruitment innovations that we've seen trend across these projects are around producing some resources to ensure that certain staff members that maybe otherwise would not have known the benefits of teaching, your per diem professionals, so substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, making sure that they understand the licensure process and what they already have that could lead to a teaching certification, making sure that they are aware of the benefits of teaching, that loan forgiveness is an option, what the health benefits look like, or a retirement package for teaching. We've also seen some projects where they've developed grow your own programs, which I always say that we would be playing the long game, but we know that our student population is diverse. So we are tapping into our student population, middle school, high school, exposing them to teaching as an option and creating some pathways, whether it be dual enrollment, whether it be some Tomorrow's Teachers programs, but we have seen some grow your own programs that have been implemented. And again, playing the long game, but really creating a pathway for some high school students to see themselves as teachers and to have opportunities that would lead them back to the school districts in which they were once students. Fostering partnerships with community colleges, again, creating that pathway where we've seen some dual enrollment opportunities. We know that our community colleges are slightly more diverse than some of our teacher preparation programs already are. So creating some pathways and some connections there. Promoting paid teacher residencies. So we've seen some very effective paid teacher residencies where our clinical interns go into a school district for the course of a full year to really be deeply engaged in that work, and some of them signing on to remain at those schools and in those school districts. Making sure that district partners are aware and understand best practices around recruitment and hiring, specifically supporting teachers of color. And then finally, they've developed some recruitment materials that are geared towards teachers of color. And that means even going beyond making sure that the images are diverse, but making sure that we're promoting the profession in a way that is appealing to a diverse workforce. We know that our educators of color want to make a difference, that they want to see teaching as a means of social justice, an opportunity to have an impact on social justice causes. Some of the preparation innovations that we've seen of our prep programs, making sure that they are able to retain individuals of color in the preparation space. So not just getting them into a preparation program, but providing them the support and guidance they need to persist through the program, to complete the program and earn certification and enter the classroom. And some of the promising practices or innovations that we've seen from those projects are the implementation of peer mentoring programs. So making sure that they see individuals like themselves in those programs and receive some support, somebody that's just cheering you on and supporting you and helping you through. Making sure that there is some support around test preparation. So making sure that the candidates of color have some support and the assessments that they need to take to enter the prep programs, but also to earn certification. Developing some anti-racist and culturally sustaining curriculum. So even in the prep space, our colleges and universities have to do that deep dive to make sure that they are presenting an inclusive environment for their candidates of color as they're in those programs, and making sure that their curriculum is anti-racist even in the preparation space. Providing holistic advisement and guidance. We know that a number of our candidates enter teacher preparation, enter colleges, and really need some guidance on what courses they need to take, what aligns to the assessments that you'll need to take, which general ed courses you need in order to qualify for certification. So making sure that they're getting that advisement and guidance throughout their preparation programs. And then also some of our prep programs, and I think this is also effective in the retention space for our educators, but listening to those experiences of those candidates of color, and then making some shifts, making some changes, listening to what they have to say, what their experiences are, so that then when they are improving their programs or making some adjustments and changes, they can make sure that their environments are supportive to their candidates of color for the next cohort that comes in. And then finally, some of the retention innovations that we've seen come out of those projects. One, we know that we hear that teachers of color feel isolated sometimes. If you have that single teacher of color in a school, sometimes it is challenging to retain them because there's some isolation where they don't have individuals that they can share experiences with or that understand their experiences. So some of what we've seen happen in the grant projects is hiring no less than 2 candidates of color per school. So making sure that there are other individuals in that school environment that can relate to one another. Enhancing the induction program, so making sure that there are coaches and mentors and professional development for the mentors, that there are days dedicated to that induction process to get the teachers not just in the door, but so that they can hit the ground running and be off to a great start to the beginning of their careers. Increasing collaboration across cohorts of teachers. So while your second-year teacher might not be a great mentor, they may not be able to serve as that mentor teacher, they could be a great collaborator for your first-year teacher. So some of those newer novice teachers could serve as some support to one another, to collaborate, to share experiences, to guide one another. Making sure that they're stimulating continuous teacher development. Again, what the research says about retaining teachers of color is that they want opportunities to grow. And we also know that and our new teachers in general, those first 3 years, there's a steep learning curve. So really making sure that we're mitigating that learning curve and providing that professional development and support that they need early on, because that is another reason why teachers leave the profession, is really not feeling fully prepared for that environment. So strengthening that development early on is helpful and important. Making sure that mentors are equity focused. So one of our grantees did a lot of training to make sure that the mentors were working with teachers of color in a way that was meaningful, but in a way that also focused on equity and understanding their experiences and examining their own biases, so that in those interactions that they were being mindful of how to be culturally responsive even as a mentor. Developing some mentor and induction programs that are responsive to the needs of new teachers. So sometimes we have this like one-size-fits-all mindset when it comes to educators, but we know that teachers can't teach students in a one-size-kind-of-fits-all box. So making sure that our new teachers, new and novice teachers, have that mentoring that is customized for them, that they are getting specifically what they need personally to grow and to develop and get better. And then also offering some social, emotional, and mental health training and support. We know that all individuals are going through quite a bit these days between the pandemic and all of the other issues that we're facing day in and day out. Our teachers need that mental health support. They need to feel like it is okay to be human, and they may also need some opportunities to examine their own mental health and to get that rest and to get the support that they need to continue to pour into our students. So some of the lessons learned from these projects, just kind of major trends that come out of them. One are the financial streams of support that are necessary to incentivize, whether it be grants or stipends or scholarships. They have been very successful to draw folks into the profession. Making sure that there's some partnerships between the school and university are ideal as well. We do know, and I always promote clinical internships and how important it is for our districts to support our teachers in that pre-service space. But we do know that the majority of our teachers, our clinical interns, say that they would remain at the school or district in which they did their student teaching if they were offered a position in that school or district. So opening your doors to your clinical interns, making sure that there are these mutually beneficial partnerships between schools and universities. Our colleges and universities, our prep programs, they want to be supportive. They want to have more mutually beneficial relationships, whether that's professional development, school networks, whether that is allowing their clinical interns into schools, but then also figuring out how they can support you. What is it that your teachers need? What resources might they have that could be helpful to the school environment, to your students, to your teachers, to your staff? Mentoring relationships and differentiation. We talked a little bit about that, but making sure that they are building meaningful relationships with the mentors, and then also that there's some differentiation there, that it is not a one-size-fits-all, checking a box and mentoring just being another compliance exercise. Making sure that there's a shared vision and mission rooted in racial and social justice to help break down some of the institutional barriers that we know students of color face in our prep programs, but also teachers of color face as they're entering schools. Making sure that there's some high quality induction, and then also cultivating leadership so that your teachers of color see opportunities to grow, to add capacity to the school and to contribute to the school community and environment. So just very quickly, some of the work that our office has been engaged in, still have our grant projects. So this year we have William Patterson University and Relay Graduate School of Education working on 2 grant projects. We also launched the Middle Color Hope Achievers partnership with Rowan University, designed to recruit, prepare, and support male teachers of color. And then there are also some funding in the budget to continue to fund these projects. We did launch the limited CEAS pilot program, which we are hoping we can gather some data to learn whether those adjustments and flexibilities and certification requirements have an impact on the diversity of our educator workforce. And then we, as the State Department, fully staffed our recruitment unit. I'm not sure if you all are aware how challenging it is. Well, you know how challenging it is to staff. So to have a fully staffed recruitment unit really shows that as a State Department, we are invested in this work. We're invested in meeting our goals, and we have some folks that are day in and day out engaged in this work to help move the needle. And then finally, this year, some of the work that we hope to do, we have started our partnership with the Regional Education Lab, and we are launching a 6-month district coaching series. So in the process of selecting 10 to 12 school districts to get some coaching around recruiting and retaining teachers of color. We are relaunching our Diverse and Learner Ready Teachers Committee, which I think a couple members here came to the info session, so I'm hoping they are on board to be part of that committee to work on some strategies to really move our goals forward. Finally, we'll be releasing those grant opportunities and then developing a mentoring network for males of color. And I know I'm a little over my time, but my email address is here. So please feel free to reach out to me if there are questions, if there are ways that we can support, if there's information that we need to know. You all are on the ground, you're doing this work, you're experiencing the day in and day out realities of this job and realities of staffing and diversifying the teacher workforce at the same time. We want to hear from you. We want to support you, and we really want to continue the partnership and strengthen it as much as possible. Thank you again, as always.
Excellent. excellent as always. I was so excited when she said she could come be with us today, so thank you, Tanisha, for sharing your leadership. Thank you. Our next speaker, I'm really, really proud to introduce. Not only is he my boss, he's the superintendent of Westminster Plainsborough Regional School District. He does, for me personally, exemplify the work that we do. While it is wonderful to see representation, I would love to see, of course, female. You know, I'm inspired when I see female leaders and female superintendents, and when I see women of color as a multiracial person myself. Of course, I would be inspired by that. He is neither of those things. However, he exemplifies recruitment and retention. He is a master at it. I have seen him work, and just working with him has been a privilege, so I'm really excited to share him with you this morning. Dr. David Atterhold.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I know I have 10 minutes, but it's always dangerous to give a superintendent a microphone. Tanisha, thank you for coming. I'm thrilled that the DOE allowed you to. I know that's sometimes challenging, so thank you for being here. First of all, welcome to Westminster Plainsborough. It's great to see so many folks that I know in the room. I'm really proud of the work that Charity does with CJPride and the work that you do. And I'm really going to try to encourage CJPride to take a much larger role in advocacy. There's an amazing, powerful voice within this body, and I think that you need to really think about how to leverage that over today at your first conference, as well as moving forward. So Charity asked me to speak a little bit about my thoughts on the work and the work that we do, how we think about it here in WWP. And I wrote so many notes during Tanisha's talk, because what it exemplifies to me is someone who is working within the structures and influencing change in her sphere of influence, right? And then you know that influence pushes systems that she maybe doesn't have the power to change, but is pushing up against that, and she's doing everything she can to expand that influence. So I give you tremendous credit for what you're doing at the department. And when I say that, I'm talking about, like, the code is not something that Tanisha and her office can impact, but Chapter 9 is up right now, right? We can help influence that within our advocacy agencies. The Teach and J Act and the destructive impacts on that is not something that Tanisha herself can impact, or any individual member of the department, but we from the field can push our members of the legislature, as well as influence some of the senior staff at the department and work with the state board to try to get them to understand the changes that are needed. When we start thinking about certification changes, that's in Chapter 9. And think about some of the challenges that you have in special education certification. Well, we can make some influence right now about highly qualified standings, right? That's in the Chapter 9 code. So we have to get out there now, because the open comment period is now. Otherwise, they're going to just proceed as is without our voice, right? So we have to leverage our voice as an agency. We start thinking about the challenges that our education partners are facing. And I have the privilege of serving as the co-chair for NJASA's Staff Recruitment and Retention Committee that was formed in August. And we are working to build, we have 4 subcommittees going, very similar, trying to do advocacy like yourself. I have the privilege to co-chair with Dr. McCarter from TCNJ. And as we're having these conversations, it's amazing that some of the very things that Tanisha's office is trying to push against and expand upon are being impacted and hindered by structures that they can't control, right? So we start thinking about full year student teaching, right? In theory, great idea, but what has it actually done? It's been destructive in sending teachers of color into the field, disproportionately. At TPA, we got that passed unanimously, right, through the legislature, and it sat on the governor's desk from May into September, where he conditionally vetoes it, and with limited conversation with the committee chairs at the legislature. Now what happens? It sits there because they're upset that it was conditionally vetoed. So we have a power grab game, yet our student teachers, our future teachers, are still subjected to EdTPA and Pearson's destructive influence on public education, right? So one of the things that I would say is where diversification happened in WWP is when we stopped taking student teachers, And so it's been an interesting impact, because when we stopped just hiring the 90% white females that came into our classrooms from Ryder and TC&J, and we actually looked at the candidate pool. We changed our process. So today, in the couple minutes that I have in my 4 pages of notes, I'm going to just talk about some of the way I think about this work. And so I'm a big systems thinking person, organizational structures, and how, and I would say that I look at like the world of architecture and design. I love a good construction project. We have a $114 million referendum going on. And there's a saying in architecture and design, form follows function, right? So I ask you to think about the systems and processes that you oversee in your organizations, in your sphere of control, and then what you can do within your sphere of control to then change that to meet your organizational goals, right? So if we go back and we think about CJPride, our promise, how is this organization moving forward? What are the structures in place? What's the form and function that you're following to influence that promise that you're trying to uphold for our kids in the state that we serve? I ask you to think about the themes and your influence and the actionable steps you can take. I love that you have a legislative committee and the work that Mike and the team has done to influence legislation and to get out there and promote. It is amazing what legislators don't know. And the first couple times I had the opportunity to sit in rooms down at the State House, I was just aghast. And then I learned, you know what, you start looking at their agenda and all the different types of bills they put forward. They don't have any expertise. They really don't. There's a limited number of teachers out there. There's Wimbley, there's Milo JC, there's a handful that had education in their life, let alone were educators, right? So we have to teach them. We have to. That means we have to work with our local assembly, our local senators. We have to get out and work with the committees. I'll have the privilege to speak at the Joint Committee on Public Schools next Wednesday on school-based youth services. We don't have a school-based youth services program, but we believe deeply in mental health and well-being for our staff and our students. We have replicated school-based youth services here with UBHC because I used to be a principal of New Brunswick High School. I used to work in Trenton as well, but at New Brunswick High School, I had the school-based youth services program. What I can tell you right now is there's going to be 20 dropouts out of New Brunswick when school-based goes away because the parent and child care system is going to go away. So my 20 kids that I had with babies in my preschool and my nursery inside my high school when I was a principal will go away, right? And now that's 20 dropouts because the way they got to school was school-based picked them up with buses, with child care seats, right? And there's 4 programs in New Jersey like that right now. So they don't even know what they're doing. And the sad thing is that's coming from Division of Children and Family. They're recommending the elimination of the very supports. It's insanity. They just don't know. So we have to teach them, and quite frankly, sometimes we have to shame them. So you don't make a lot of friends sometimes. But I look at it as we also have to place privilege in WWP. What's the state going to do? Monitor me? So what? They're going to go after my test scores, right? We have the highest SAT average in the state. Sorry, Princeton and Milford, we do. What are they really going to do to me? Put me on a corrective action plan? Okay, I'll have my staff work on it. So the other thing I would say is find ways to anchor your work, right? Find ways to point at things beyond just yourselves. And we anchor everything back to research. We anchor everything back to frameworks. So, we're talking about our goal on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're talking about the social justice standards. When we're talking about global citizenship, we're looking at the Asia Society standards. When we're talking about what it means to be a good teacher, take this for what it is. We do talk about the Danielson framework, and we talked about that before Danielson was required, right? When we talk about SEL, we talk about the Castle framework. We point at structures beyond WWP, right, and to raise voice. So we really work hard to raise voice, and one of the things that we've been doing this year, because there's no secret here, it's been tough, right, these last couple of years. And there's a lot of change that has happened in our organizations when we were in some form of hybrid or virtual or combo or in or out, and people were sick, and people retired, and we've had huge staffing challenges. So we went with a theme this year of belonging. And, belonging, you go, But Brene Brown's got a great book that just came out called Atlas of the Heart. There's a great Netflix series on it. And here's a quote from her. It's because we feel belonging only if we have the courage to share our most authentic selves with people. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So when you think about the work that we do in HR and onboarding and retention, we think a lot about making sure that our staff feels belonging. They feel like they are connected to. We have a saying that is, let your vision drive your hiring. So it is incredibly powerful over time. And I've had the pleasure now to hire, we have 55 certified administrators. I've hired all but 4 in the last 14 years that I've been in WWP, right? And so when you say that your staff is your vision of what's good for kids, and you stand in front of new teachers and you say that the individuals around you supporting this organization are part of your collective vision and that they are the very byproduct of someone's vision for what's good for kids, it's incredibly powerful. You support them with a robust mentoring program. You support them with ongoing support and professional development. You support them with meaningful evaluations and feedback cycles. You support them with supervisors and training and curriculum and professional development and growth opportunities. You support them through parent meetings and transitional experiences. And you have individuals that are going to stay in your organization. So when we talk about belonging, it's like, okay, so what's that mean? So I just said we anchor our work. So the Harvard Business Review had a great article on belonging a couple of years ago. And they look at it as 4 themes. Feeling seen in your organization, feeling connected in your organization, supported, and having pride. Right? So those are things everyone can get their heads around. And it's really easy to have definitions of what that means in connection. So this year, as we launched our opening faculty meetings, I always do an opening video because we can't fit in any of our auditoriums. And quite honestly, we found like it was a waste of time to bring people to one spot. It was 2 hours of a loss when you have 2 days to open, right? So now they watch a 10-minute video. And we talked about belonging, and we're themed belonging through all of our faculty meetings. So we really believe in structures that help support our buildings. So what can we influence? We can help provide them with professional development and training. And we help give them turnkey lessons. And then we replicate those to them at our assistant principals meetings, our principal meetings, and our supervisor meetings. We make sure that they have the support that they need so that they can then turnkey the work. So when we talk about connection and we talk about energy around that connection, you think about the energy between people, and when you feel seen, when you feel heard, when you feel valued, when you have that connection and pride in your organization, it's incredibly, incredibly uplifting and powerful. But then when you have people that go beyond and advocate for you, it's even more powerful. And when you're seen as for your authentic self, and you can bring your full self to your organization, and you feel valued, it's even that much more powerful. So whether it's your background, or who you love, or where you came from, or what your ethnicity or your race is, when you feel seen and valued for the authentic person that you are, and you're valued in that organization, how wonderful that is that. And we stress that with our administrative team, right? And our administrative team replicates that. And if I find out someone's not honoring that, we're having conversations, because then they don't uphold our values, right? And I have removed a principal on the spot, middle of the year, because they did something that did not uphold our values. And then I stood in front of that faculty, and I said, what they did, they were not tenured, so it's easier. But what they did does not reflect who we are or what we believe about children, and is not acceptable. And it was so egregious that they had to go, right? And then we talked, and the staff, they thought we knew that they said something or did something, and we were just accepting it. So when you don't address, right, when you allow something to just go, it sends a dangerous message too. That's what we have to do as leaders. in WWP, we also have an equity goal, and I'll wrap this up relatively quick, but that equity goal came out of our strategic goals. Actually, it didn't, right? Equity was seen. So strategic planning is a tricky process, and we've all most likely been through it at this point in the room. I chose not to be in the room because I was always afraid that if I was in the room, my voice would just be the one that they said, yeah, that's what Dave wants, and it just become the goal. So I did not stay in the room when the goals were selected, but I was really pleased with the three goals that were selected. But equity wasn't raised to the top of the top three. But the way people justified it was, well, equity is in everything we do. Okay. So we tried to play that game for 2 years. Technology is in everything we do, equity is in everything we do. Except the thing is, you don't fund what's not a strategic goal. You don't specifically train and support what's not. And it took me 2 years to convince the board we needed to create an additional goal outside of the strategic planning process to drive the work. So the intentionality of building goal is you fund what you value, right? And if you're going to not put equity up there, in your mission, in your strategic goals, chances are the dollars won't follow. So in the intentionality of the talking about the work, again, people need places to point, right? So you have to give them places to point. So our staff can now talk about our strategic goals, and our equity goal says, West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional District will cultivate a diverse and inclusive community where members of every race, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, religion, socioeconomic class, ethnicity, and national origin are welcomed, valued, respected, and celebrated. So go back to the belonging, right, about being seen, connected, supported, having pride in your organization. All that connects. So when these values come together and there's synergy in that work, again, we say that when you're living your mission, when you're living, there's nothing more powerful, right? There's nothing more powerful. So I have the pleasure to work with incredible people and support them, and I learn from them on a daily basis. And all that work is in service of our students and our colleagues out in the field. We also have the privilege to elevate voices, as I have 3 members right now speaking at NJPSA's workshop in Atlantic City on DEI and the work the district is doing. But we supported them and supported their presentation down there. And we have to ensure that moving forward, that we're moving forward thoughtfully in a connected way, and that we're constantly evaluating and looking at the organization and what can we do better, what can we do different, what can we do to include more voice. We don't do everything perfect, but my favorite George Bushism is you need to have strategery in your life. You need to be constantly thinking strategically about how do you advance the work on behalf of kids. I wish you a wonderful day here at CJPride, and I truly encourage this organization to continue to raise your voice because there's really powerful things that you can do. So thank you and have a great day. Welcome to the district.
Thank you so much. Do you see what I mean? Appreciate you, Dr. Adderall. Our next presenter, and by the way, I've extended the time. We have an activity scheduled for right after Dr. Weber, but I have that in there in case we need it. And we didn't. So I'd love to introduce Dr. Weber. I spoke with our executive board about an article that I came across about the shrinkage of staff that's happening across the state, and I was amazed by what his data that was in there and what he was saying, and we really felt like this is exactly what we think. This is someone who agrees with us. So of course, we like people like us. So, and luckily he was available to come talk to us. You may also know him on Twitter. He's a very big presence. He's Jersey Jazz Man. And lucky for us, he's here with us today. So Dr. Weber, would you like to come over? I'll get you set up.
I don't know, we'll see what happens. Good morning, everyone. While Charity's setting up, let me start by thanking you for having me here. I was not aware of CJPride, and I got the request through at JPP, and I talked with Charity a little bit and found out what this group is about, and I'm like, how can I say no, number one, and number two, how honored I feel that I'm worth your time, because what you're doing, I can't think of anything more important in education particularly in this state. So it's a real honor to be here. Thank you. I think it speaks volumes about the department that you're here, Ms. Davis, and volumes that are very good. This is an issue that, again, I think has to be at the forefront. So thank you for being here, and I was really interested by what you had to say. I do want to say to Dr. Adderholt, this is the first time we're meeting, and I appreciate that you walk your talk, because Dr. Adderholt, for those of you, I don't know how you could not know that he is out there actually talking about this stuff, pressuring people in the press, talking about these things that, you know, I'll look at MJ Spotlight and say, oh, here he goes again. And this is what we need. I'll probably say this again at the end. You all have to understand the power you have. You represent education, public education, to all of your parents, all of your community, all of your students, all of your staff, and to policymakers. You are the ones, when you walk in the room, I've seen this, me and my graphs, they're like, you, they listen to. And you have to get in front of them. And you have to be out in the public talking about these things. It is critically important. So thank you for doing that. Just so you have a little idea of where I'm coming from, my Bruce Wayne life is, I'm a teacher. I'm a music teacher. There were rumors going around Trenton for a while when I first started doing this kind of stuff. He's really a lawyer. And no, I only wish. I'm a teacher in Warren Township, and there's my Human Resources Director, Shannon Regan. You're doing a presentation later, right? So listen to her, because you can take it from me. She knows what she's talking about. And we're very lucky to have her. Sure. But then my Batman life is at night. I teach at Rutgers GSE. I teach public school finance, which was the topic of my dissertation of my PhD. I also teach education law. And then I work for the New Jersey Policy Perspective doing policy work in education. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And I'm going to start by, all right. So it's going to go like that. Okay, so we're going to play a game. And you actually are part of an experiment. Because Wednesday night, I taught public school finance at the GSE. Most of my students are ed leadership candidates. So they're like current teachers who are training to be principals, work in central office, do administrative tasks. So I played this game with them on Wednesday night. Then on Thursday night, I was invited over to Blaustein by Brandon McCoy, who's the former president of NJPP, and is now working for Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. If you don't know Brandon, great guy. And he asked me to come in and teach his class of policy students at Blaustein, so very different students. And now I'm going to play the game with you. And we're going to see what the difference is in the response. You ready? Okay. Whose taxes are lower? Yeah, I already like this, huh? Okay. 2 houses. Exactly the same. Exactly the same house. Exactly the same plot of land. For the purposes of our conversation, exactly the same price. You'll understand why I put that caveat on there in a few, okay? Exactly the same in all details, except one is located in Palookaville. And Palookaville has a lot of levitt houses, maybe, what would we call them, like, cottages, that sort of thing. Lower average property values, okay? The other house, exactly the same price, is in Hoity-Toity Village, which has Toll Brother McMansions with infinity pools in the back, okay? I don't want to give it away, here we go. right? Palookaville has a lower average property value across the district, and Hoity-Toity Village has a higher property value across the district. So we got three, oh, hello. Is that right? Oh, Charity, did I mess this up? There we go. So we got three possibilities, okay? The homeowners pay the same in taxes. The one in Hoity-Toity Village pays more. The one in Palookaville pays more. So real quick, who thinks they pay the same? Duh. Who thinks Hoity-Toity Village pays more in taxes? Who thinks Palookaville pays more in taxes? If we're going to raise equivalent revenues, we're going to have to look at the total tax capacity of that community. Well, Palooka's total tax capacity is lower than Hoity-Toity Village's. And so they have to have a higher tax rate in order to be able to raise equivalent amounts. Let's put it this way, okay? Suppose we want to raise $10,000. Now, these are purely arbitrary figures. I only did this making the math easy, okay? We've got average house price of, say, $100,000. And we want to raise $10,000 per household. And let's say the two communities are the same population, right? We're going to have a tax rate of 10% in Palookaville. But in Hoity-Toity Village, the average property value is $1 million. Look, if that house was in Somerset County, it's going to be worth a lot more than $1 million, right? But let's call it $1 million. To raise that same 10K, the tax rate is only 1%. Does that make sense? Well, who does that tax rate get applied to? It gets applied to everybody. So that house there, even though it costs the same, is going to have a much higher tax rate. Think of it this way. Your tax base is based not on the value of your house, but on the value of your house and all your neighbors. And who your neighbors are is going to affect your tax rate, right? So, to that $500,000 house has a 10% tax rate, and they're being taxed at $50,000, but that $500,000 house has a 1% tax rate, and they're being only taxed $5K. So who pays more in taxes? The house that's in Palookaville. What in the world does this have to do with financing staffing schools? And I would argue everything. Everything. And we need to think about this carefully. By the way, here's the results of the experiment. You guys were about 50-50, right? The policy students, every one of them got it. Every one of them do it. The ed leadership, not so much. And I could see the light, we were on Zoom, I could see the light bulbs going off, right? This is something we don't much think about, but it's at the heart of school funding, and school funding is at the heart of education. Before we continue any further, just so that we're clear on this, there is no debate about how funding affects student outcomes. You will hear people try to tell you there's a debate. I'm here to tell you from school finance nerd world, the debate is over. We are not debating this anymore. Kirabo Jackson, professor at Northwestern University, does a lot of work in this, said this a couple of years ago in an interview. No one debates this anymore. Even the people who used to try to raise doubts about this, they don't doubt it anymore. The debate that's going on is how much more and who needs the extra funding, right? That's really it. But if you put more money into a school district, on average, you're going to get better values, better outcomes. That's just beyond debate. So this is where we're coming from with that. By the way, should I? Is that right? There we go. One of my favorite economists, Leah Platt-Bouston, who used to be at Princeton, she's no longer there, wrote a paper about this very thing. And homeowners were willing to pay 7.4% more for an otherwise equivalent housing unit located in a town whose median income was $10,000 higher. In other words, this idea that those two houses were going to be $500,000, they're not. You're going to pay more to live in hoity-toity village. And the reason why is your taxes are going to be lower. It's going to pay off in the long run for you. So you're willing to put up more in the value of your house because your tax amount is going to be less. So with that, let's ask the question. Will you all tell me, is this really happening or not? I read and I hear from people like Dr. Adderholt, and I see them in front of the legislature. There was last year, superintendent after superintendent after superintendent gets up in front of the legislature and says, we've got a problem. And yet, there are people out there who say, hey, wait a minute now, we can't call it a crisis, we need to think about this carefully. So I want to take you through some data. You're going to give me the sign when it's time, right? Okay. Hopefully we can have some time to have some conversation too. I'm going to take you through some data about what we know, and then we can come back and answer this question, okay? So what do we know nationally? We don't have great data in terms of just teachers or just instructional staff. This is all staff. But that big decline on the right side of the graph is the pandemic. And we lost hundreds of thousands of people who were working in schools. But again, we don't know. What was that? Support staff, non-certificated staff? We're really not sure. It's probably going to be a while before we find it out. But clearly there was a drop. This is by a paper from Matthew Kraft, who teaches at Brown, great economist who's working in this field. What we haven't seen yet is any evidence of a large-scale teacher turnover. Now, here's one of the problems that we're running into. This is an average of, I think, 16 states is what they did for most years. It was actually less before. Those gray lines are states. So we don't have a large sample. With all due respect to the department, that is something I would suggest we need to work on. Our department is very good with data when it comes to a lot of different things. Finance data, we're probably better than most states. Enrollment data, things like that. There's some other stuff we could work on, and I think this is one of the ones. So that's ongoing work. So we don't know that there's been turnover yet. What we do know is that we have had a huge decrease in the number of people entering the pipeline. This is from a source called Title II data from the federal government, and this is the source from New Jersey. From, let's say, 2011, 2012, there's our peak. We're at less than half the number of people have been entering and completing teacher preparation programs than we had a decade ago. Well, does it have to do with losing students? Not at all. This is the number of completers, teacher prep completers per 1,000 students. And we got this wrong in a report that we did last year. We didn't get the New Jersey part wrong, we got the national part wrong. There was a weird quirk in the data. And so I'm going back to fix it, and we'll be revising it. We're a little below the rest of the nation in terms of producing candidates per student, but actually we track pretty closely with the rest of the nation, which means that this is not a problem exclusive to us. This is happening all over the country right now. And part of that has been fewer teachers of color. The data's a little bit earlier, but we see these same declines in Latinx or Hispanic teachers, Black African American teachers, Asian teachers, I should say teacher candidates. We have fewer and fewer people coming into the pipeline. Now, this is a different data set that's showing the same thing. This is from iPads, which tracks college data. These are people who are specifically getting degrees in teaching. And again, we see that same sharp decline. Why? Well, we're going to go through the reasons, but as is specific to college, how much does it cost to get a college degree, and what's your return on that investment as a teacher? We have to start having a frank conversation about that right now. And we'll get more into that. Well, actually, let's talk about it right now. What exactly is the teacher pay gap? Do we have a teacher pay gap? Well, there's a lot of ways to approach this. There are different data sources. I use American Community Survey, which comes from the Census Bureau. The folks at the Economic Policy Institute, great folks doing great work. They use different data that comes from BLS. We use the ACS data with this project with the Schenker Institute called the School Finance Indicators Database that Bruce Baker, who used to be at Rutgers and is now at University of Miami, and Bruce and I have been working together for years. He's the project team leader on that. We do a slightly different model. I do a slightly different model just for New Jersey. They do a slightly different model at EPI, and so we get slightly different results about what exactly the teacher pay gap is. But we all show the same thing. The gap is growing. And it's been growing for years. That downward decline in all four of these, what these are real quick is that the dotted lines do not take into account the number of teachers who might be at private schools in New Jersey. And if you really want me to bore you, you can. If you're having trouble sleeping, you can call me up at night and I will explain the modeling to you. God help you. I used a way to try to remove those private school teachers, and I think it's pretty credible. I think it works out pretty well. The one is for master's degrees. The one that is in orange is master's degrees. The one in blue is bachelor's degrees, compared to other workers who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. We can argue about what the size of that gap is, but there is no argument, and EPI confirms this, it's been growing. The relative value of what a teacher makes compared to other similarly educated college workers has been increasing. And I would argue that is beyond dispute. But is the response. But. The shortages are only in certain areas. Curricular areas. STEM, special education, foreign language, ESL. Right? That's where the shortages are. Everything else is fine. Don't worry about it. The shortages are only in certain districts. West Windsor, fine. They're fine. Don't worry about West Windsor. Trenton, okay. Maybe we've got to do something there. What about teacher benefits? You keep talking about a teacher wage gap. What about benefits? I love the response to that. What about benefits? You got to count benefits, right? And what about all that pandemic money? That was going to save everything, right? These are the big responses that I keep hearing. So let's deal with them one at a time. There is a misalignment between teacher preparation and subject certification. So again, traditionally, math, science, STEM, foreign language, ESL, special education. So what I did was I took the Title II data for 2018-19, and then I took the staffing data for the state of New Jersey. I took out the support staff that is not in the Title II data, nurses, because they come from a different pipeline, right? VOTEC educators generally come from a different pipeline, counselors, things like that. And just went with the certifications that were in the Title II data. How do we compare the workforce as it stands right now with who's being prepared in what subject? Okay, math and science, the blue is the workforce, the orange is the preparation. We are not preparing proportionally the number of math teachers we need. We're not preparing proportionally the number of science teachers we need. I would point out that's also true for art, it's true for music, it's true for physical education, it's certainly true for foreign language. We're not producing enough. Where are we overproducing? We're overproducing a little in English, a little bit in social studies, and then in elementary. But do you see a big difference in special ed? This is one of the areas where over and over again we hear we don't have a deep enough pool in special ed. But as a proportion, we seem to be producing a lot of special ed teachers. So what's going on? One explanation would be we're just not producing enough overall teachers, period. Elementary, that's the one place where a superintendent will say, I'm used to getting 30, 40, 50 resumes of all highly qualified candidates on my desk. Now, I would ask some of you, were you getting 50 resumes before, now you're getting 20? I see some heads nodding, because that's one thing. But I want you to consider something else, and it's something that is not thought about very often. I had this all nice and set up with percentages. Something happened when it came through the email that we went there. Yeah, 42% of your elementary teachers are women under the age of 40. And only 29% of all your other teachers are women under the age of 40. And who has babies, right? I think this is something that we've kind of taken for granted. There's this pool of people who haven't gotten that job they want yet. And when teachers go on maternity leave, that's who we draw from. Now, how big should that pool be? That's a good question. We don't know. There's a lot of ways that we could approach it. But I would caution you, this idea of automatically saying we're overproducing elementary teachers is perhaps more complicated and subtle than the dialogue would suggest. Okay. Who's feeling the shortage the most? Right? We don't really have good data on unfilled positions, so it's hard to say certain districts are having, in my opinion, we're relying too much on anecdote. I can tell you this for a fact. Underfunded districts are at a competitive disadvantage in recruitment for staff. Underfunded districts have fewer staff per student, right? Blue are the highly funded districts, more than $5,000 above SFRA adequacy. Red are the severely underfunded districts, and you can see they have fewer staff per student. And they have less competitive wages. Well, again, similar sort of wage model that's accounting for years of experience. We use staffing data for this. We used to get the staffing data with age and race and ethnicity, and we don't get it anymore. And if you could do something, that would really be great. Thank you. My good friends at the department who fulfill all of my Oprah requests. And they do. And I'm very grateful for that, but I stopped getting that. And that's actually really useful, I think, for right now. So hopefully, if we could figure out some way to maybe protect it, get like Rutgers to be a data repository, something that would be great, and then we could do some more work on this. Teacher salaries, though, that blue line is districts that are severely underfunded. basically this is saying that their salaries are just not as competitive, even if you take years of experience and job code and where you live into account. So we've got districts that anecdotally seem to be having a problem recruiting staff. We've got to look at whether these districts are actually able to be competitive. The numbers came out weird again. It happened when we sent it through the email, but that's okay. Basically, let me see if I can explain this. These are the DFG A and B districts, right? The Abbotts. Those are the non-Abbott A and Bs. Those are the middle ones, and those are the most affluent districts. The most affluent districts, if you're a teacher with 10 years of experience and you have a master's degree and you teach math, on average you make $74,400 in the most affluent districts, but in the next ones down you make about $5,000 less. It's more competitive when you get to the Abbott districts because traditionally they were getting more money than the non-Abbotts, but there is still a competitive disadvantage. So what is West Windsor? No. What is your DFG? Your J, right? You have a competitive advantage over Trenton in terms of the salary that you can offer. And there's good evidence that to attract a teacher of similar credentials and quality into a district like Trenton as opposed to a district like West Windsor, you need to pay more. And yet we're actually paying less. So there's an equity question here. I'm going to go over this one real quick because I think everyone in this room understands this. Benefits do not make up the pay gap when you are talking about comparing teachers to other college-educated workers, which is the only reasonable comparison, the only thing that makes sense. Health insurance for college-educated workers is very common. This is from the census data. Blue line is teachers, orange is non-teachers. A tiny fraction more of teachers than other college-educated workers. You're a college-educated worker, you're not self-employed, you go work for somebody, you're going to get health insurance. It does cost private sector workers more, blue line, to pay for their health insurance. But you see how both lines are going up? Teachers and other public employees have been paying more for their health insurance like everyone else. They have an advantage. They do have an advantage. There's no question about that. But that advantage has not been growing while their pay advantage has been shrinking. They never had a pay advantage, so the pay gap is growing. Pensions. New tiers, no COLAs, no cost of living allowances, more employee increases. One of the arguments, which I frankly find hilarious, that I'll hear about pensions is, well, we shouldn't do anything about the pensions because young people don't expect them anyway. Young workers don't expect them. Oh, okay, well, what's that? Well, young workers believe that they're going to do a whole bunch of jobs in their lives. All young workers, as opposed to people who potentially would go into teaching, because I would argue they probably have different feelings about those sorts of things. But also, if you say we can't make up the benefit, we can't make up the wage difference with pensions, then you ought not to include them when I talk about the gap between teacher wages and other wages. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, well, teachers don't really have a pay gap because they get good benefits, and then turn around and say, well, we shouldn't do anything to shore up benefits because teachers don't really want them anyway. Either they have a value or they don't. You can't have it both ways, and yet there are people in this state who go around and make this argument. And it's ludicrous, in my opinion. Teachers are paying more and more for their pensions. We all know this, right? It used to be 3% not that long ago. Now it's 7.5%. We've got all the different tiers now. You're all aware of this. And then since there's no cost of living allowance, we've seen the value of the dollar because of inflation, the purchasing power of the pensions actually decrease. So, but the COVID's going to save us. COVID money's going to save us, right? We got a massive, massive amount of COVID money. How many of you have heard that in the press? An unprecedented amount of federal funding is coming from COVID. When you total it up, it comes to about $189 billion. That's the best estimate that I've been able to figure out. How much do we spend on K-12 education in this country a year? About $750 billion. So let's break this down for New Jersey. This is from the Ed Law Center. So they put it at about $4.3 billion that New Jersey gets one-time recurring education relief funds. How much do we spend on K-12 education in this state? Fiscal year 18, state and local expenditure on elementary and secondary education about $30 billion. So we're talking about 14% of that for 1 year. And it's really being spread out to at least 2, probably 3 years. Is that substantial? Yes, it is. It is substantial. Is it systemic change that will fundamentally change who decides to go into teaching and fundamentally address inequities in school funding? I would argue not. I would argue not. And then, in addition to that, they say it's not. They say it's supplement, not supplement. They say it's not. Like Title I is supplement, not supplement. Kind of is. Kind of is. So I ask you today: is this a coincidence? The number of completers is dropping at the same time that wage competitiveness is dropping. Is this a coincidence? Is it just seeming to happen, or is something going on with the teaching pipeline? What can we do about this? By the way, this was a recent survey. 75% of teachers disagreed with the statement, "My salary is fair for the work I do." 75%. Over half strongly disagreed with that statement. We got to acknowledge the problem. We can't keep denying that wages and benefits are not part of the issue. We have got to acknowledge this is a problem. It is time to recalibrate the School Funding Reform Act, in my opinion. There is reason to believe that it was not set properly. The weights and the base amounts were not set properly during the professional judgment panel portion of the development of the formula. We have better econometric methods now. We have better data. We should be using statistics not to dictate what SFRA sets, but to inform it. And the time to do that is now. We're zeroing in on getting to full funding of the formula. The Ed Law Center says it's under $1 billion. We're zeroing in on that, but is SFRA enough? We have to take another look at it. I believe we need to reform student teaching. Dr. Adderhill talked a little bit about this. Thank you for your leadership on MTPA. There are other things that we should be looking at. Other states are looking into actually paying student teachers. Right? I find the argument parallel to that of college student athletes. Right? They're doing all this work, and are they really being compensated fairly? We could make the same argument about student teachers, and we ought to be thinking about that. I do think programs like what the department is doing are very important, though. And expanding things like loan forgiveness would help. I would ask as a final note here, because I am speaking with superintendents, assistant superintendents, human resources people, I would ask you to consider, when you're making decisions, am I making the job better? The first question you ought to ask when you make a decision, in my opinion, is this good for students? That should be your first, but immediately afterwards, am I making this job better? Maybe I really want this program, but is it going to make things better for my staff? The percentage of teachers who say they are satisfied with their jobs is at a historical low. This isn't all on you. How could it possibly be all on you? But what are you doing to fight against this? What are you doing to make the job better? There's a great paper that came out last year in the Harvard Education Review. And it was a really great piece of qualitative research where the author interviews high-achieving college students and finds out what they think about teaching. And all of them had learned that teaching was not something they should do. They were too good for teaching. And they've been told by their peers, their parents, faculty, this is not a career for you. We've got to change that. And we have to start by having the people who do this job be our best evangelists. They're the ones who have to go out and preach the gospel, that this is a job that's worthy. But we have to make it a worthy job in terms of pay, in terms of compensation, but also in terms of agency, in terms of making the job something that people want to do. So I'm going to read this, if you'll forgive me. But I know they always tell you don't read your PowerPoints, but I think this is worth reading. This is a little story at the end of this piece. The author is recounting this from a director of a teacher prep program at an elite college. She recounts a story from Junior Parents Week, and she spoke at a few years ago. We were in the lecture theater, and I had them tape a card under every seat. I said to the parents, I want you to look under your seat. There's a card. I want you to write down the name of an important teacher. Everybody does it in a heartbeat. A to Z, everyone's there. Everyone's got a great teacher. And they don't just have the name, they have stories. They really want to tell you about them. They're desperate to tell you about them. Then I said, okay, so you've got this name of this person who was an important teacher to you. I'd like you to imagine that 20 years from now we do the same thing and people pull up this card and they write down the name of your son or your daughter. The room was dead silent and I didn't say anything more. You could call it a guilt trip or whatever, but just how would you feel? You know me, I don't take any prisoners. I just let it sit. What your staffs do is important. What you do is important. It matters. What's more important than this? What is more important than educating the children of this state? There are other things as important, but more important. We've got to have pay and benefits that are commensurate with that responsibility and that importance, but also we need to be able to make sure we are doing what we can to make this a job worth doing. Charity, you have the slides. If you want to send them out, happy to do that. Again, it was a real honor to be here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And just so everyone knows, if you're not aware, on our event site, there is a resources tab. You are able to access all of the materials. It's up here in the top corner. You'll see resources, and you'll be able to access, even for our breakout sessions, you'll be able to get our presentations if you'd like to go back. So we have Ms. Davis's, we have Dr. Weber's, also the article that was so inspiring, which I'm so thrilled that you were able to come today. Right now, though, I have to sort of shift gears a little bit and get us onto Zoom because our last guest speaker is in South Carolina. Couldn't make it here today, but she is the wonderful Vanessa Bradley Newton. So I'm going to just try to get her onto Zoom. She's been stuck in the waiting room, and I had no idea. So I'm going to go try to do that real quick. And then that'll be our last before we go and get ready for our breakout sessions. By the way, if you needed to get coffee or something, you can just sneak out. It's not like you're helping her. There she is. there, Vanessa?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh my goodness. And so we're just sort of throwing you out here right now. Can you see us all?
Yes, I can. Good morning, everyone.
So before she says, first of all, she's fabulous, okay? So I'll let her talk in just a minute. But this, if you have not seen any of Vanessa's work, and works, I should say, you'll find her in the Hallmark store, in the mahogany section. You will see her illustrations all over Barnes & Noble. She is acclaimed. She's a brilliant singer. She's an unbelievable speaker. She's been on TED Talk. I put several little video clips on our resources page. She's also a dear friend. She's really family to me, so I feel like I'm kind of famous knowing her. But so I do have a little bit of a knowledge about her, but I was really excited because she's just blowing up. You will see her all over the place. You will continue to see her, and the work that she does and who she is very much resonates with the work that we do in CJPride. So Vanessa, thank you so much for coming today, and we have a group here of about 50 of school leaders all around the state of New Jersey, and you're a Jersey girl too?
Yes.
So welcome, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Charity. It is indeed an honor and pleasure to be here with all of you. Sorry I couldn't be here in person with you all, but glad that we've gotten through COVID. Not without losses, but we are here. And therefore, I am very, very grateful. Just to get real started really, really quickly, just to give you a little bit of background from where I come from. I wanted to show you all video, but we only have 15 minutes. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to do some storytelling because that's what I am. People call me the right.
Hold on. You got more than 15 minutes. I'm sorry. What time does the schedule say she has until? 10:30, right? Yeah, 10:25. So you got to look. Oh, it's okay. Never mind. Go ahead.
Okay. Just to start you off with on my little journey. So I was about 3 years old and drawing on all my mom and daddy's walls in their house. If it was white, it was going to get a picture from Vanessa on it, for sure. And I remember as I got older, about 5 or 6 years old, I remember going into the kitchen. And we were living in an old tenement in Newark, New Jersey. And I remember sitting on the floor and drawing on the side of the kitchen stove with my Crayola crayons. And when the stove got hot, it melted down on the floor. And I jumped back and I said, I'm an artist. And they said, no, you're not. You're a janitor. You're going to clean all this up. And so I ended up cleaning up everything. And they sent me to my room. And when I went to my room, I went into the closet and I drew on the baseboards. Now, you see, I did this because I am dyslexic. I also have something called synesthesia, which is the ability to see, smell, feel, taste, and hear color. And I'm also a stutterer. And this kind of frustrated my parents because at the time, there were no special classes or anything to send your child to. Basically, you were just put into a special ed situation and basically left there with confusion, basically. It was hard. It was very, very hard. Not talking until I was 5 years old kind of frustrated them as well. And my parents didn't know how to be an advocate for me, and so I didn't have any advocates or anything. And then I was put into a school, because it was about 1968, 69. My parents put me in a school that was predominantly white, and I was the only black child in the classroom. It was not fun. Not fun at all. Not because I was black. That wasn't it. I got a real bad experience with the teacher, who made it very clear to my mom and dad that she did not want me in her class because I was black. And my mother had this way of dressing me and my sister Corey. She would dress us so well that people called us the Board of Health. When they would see us coming, they'd go to Board of Health, because we would have on those little white pinafores, you know, and rather shirts, Peter Pan collared shirts, and plaid pinafores, and a big red sweater, and my shiny brown Bruster Browns. And I was all ready for school. And I remember walking into her classroom and she making it very clear to me as a child that she did not want me in the classroom. And all I wanted to do was be in that class to learn. That's all I wanted. And I remember them serving me oatmeal. And when I didn't eat the oatmeal, she threatened me and told me that if I didn't eat the oatmeal, she was going to stick my head in the fish tank over there. and it scared the living heck out of me. I went home and I did not tell my mother and father anything. Because back in those days, if you went home and told your mama something was wrong, guess what? You were going to get your little butt handed to you. Okay? So my mom and dad were from old school, low country, South Carolina, where they didn't mind using their hand on your behind. And so it was not good. It was not good at all. But needless to say, my career in school went from 0 to 0 real fast and in a hurry. I failed all the way through school. All the way through school. Not a good grade. No, that was not it. And not because I was a dumb kid. Not because I was a kid with special needs. It was because nobody understood that I was dyslexic, that I stuttered, that I had synesthesia. Those programs, unfortunately, were not available at that time. But as I progressed through school, I did have some good teachers, some excellent teachers. One teacher in particular, her name was Mrs. Russell. I will never forget Mrs. Russell. Mrs. Russell had the biggest afro I think I've ever seen in my whole entire life. The afro was orange. It was orange, and she wore orange dresses, and they were above her knee. Basically, parents were scared for her to bend over. She was fly. She was everything. She had these gorgeous white go-go boots that she wore. That I want them go-go boots. When I get big, I'm gonna get me some go-go boots, just like Mrs. Russell. And Mrs. Russell knew that I learned differently from other children because she watched me. And I remember to this day, almost 60 years old, I remember her sitting me on her lap and pulling out a book that I will never, ever, ever forget. The name of the book is called A Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. And I remember that woman sitting me on her lap behind a little screen and reading to me The Snowy Day. I never, ever remember the words, but I always remember the pictures. The pictures were indelibly and are indelibly printed on my brain. I can't wash them off. They're so inside of me. Because it was the first time that I, as a child, would get to see a brown child that looked like me. A brown protagonist in a book that would look and have brown skin, have hair. His mama looked like my mama, even down to the yellow gingham house dress. My mama wore a yellow gingham house dress. I thought that was my mom. And I thought that Peter was a brother or a cousin or a friend that just got lost in a book. But it made such an impact on me to see myself. And I know the power of children and all children seeing themselves. You see, I worked in a hospital for 25 years where I was a phlebotomist. I call myself a vampire. I was a phlebotomist and I took blood from women with cancer, men with cancer, children with cancer. That was my specialty. Drug addicts, you name it. I dealt with every type of person, and I will tell you, I do believe that all people should work in a public service position at least once in their life, so you know how to treat people. And I was called a monster to some of the people. I would go to the parents and tell them that I have to draw their blood. And or the child's blood, and the parents would, oh, that's a monster, and if you're not good, I'm going to tell Miss Vanessa to draw blood on you. And I'm like, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to help you. I'm not here to be your enemy. I'm here to take care of you. I'm here to make sure that your child gets the best care ever. Because if the doctor comes in here and tries to draw blood on your kid, oh, baby, you're going to see something you ain't never seen before. You want a professional to do this. I'm a professional. I'm so professional, I won awards getting blood from children. Not because I want to, but it taught me something. And that was to see everyone. Because cancer, HIV, COVID, don't care how rich, how educated, how much money you got, where you going on your next vacation. Do you have a girlfriend, boyfriend? Are you gay or straight? It don't care. And I wanted to have the same attitude as those diseases. But not to come to bring dis-ease, to bring ease to people about diversity. See, I come from a very, very diverse household. My mom and dad, although African American and from the South, they were musicians. And the one thing I love about musicians don't care what color you are. They don't care if you're rich or poor. Can you play that bass? Can you play them drums? That's all we, can you keep time? That's all we care about. Is your voice really, really good? Oh, you just happen to be black? That's even better. And so I was exposed to Asians, Italian, Hispanic, Latino, you name it, white, black. I was exposed to every culture. And I learned that really quickly there was only one race, and that was called the human race. One race. You see, in taking care of these children, I held every baby of every culture you could possibly name. I have held them in my arms, and the one thing that I learned very, very quickly is that babies want three things from you. Three things. When I poop out this diaper, can you change it? Is there some milk or a breast in there with some milk in it so I can eat? And lastly, are your heart and your arms strong enough to hold me? That's it. They don't care what color you are. I've never had a baby tell me, put me down because you're black. Ever. And so diversity is everything to me because I want every child to see themselves beautifully illustrated in the books that I do. I write books not just for black children. I write books for children. I care about children. I'm 5 years old, perpetually. I don't ever expect to be 77 and to be 77. I'll be 77 and 5. Okay? Because that's where I live. That's my happy spot. That's where I see people. And even though I live in a real world where I have been called the N-word, where I have been told off by other people, I know my work. I know what I bring to the table. I know who I am. And if I can put that in children, and if I can put that in adults, in a book, oh my goodness. That's just my happy place. So it's not that I'm just doing books for black children to see themselves. I want even white children, Asian children, children who think that black children only can be slaves or only can be civil rights marchers. I want them to know there's some other options, baby. You can be an astronaut if you want to be. You can be a fashion designer. You can be a teacher or an administrator that can change lives. And if I can do that in just a few minutes in a book, to tell a child that, you know what, you got some options. You can do other things. I know that your mom and dad are scared for you, but I want your mom and daddy to keep their fears to themselves and not put it on you. So you can do what you need to do. So that you can be the best that you need to be. When you get in that classroom, that your teacher hopefully won't really have to parent you, that you're being parented at home, because it's hard enough for teachers and administrators with all the stuff they have on their table to come to school and now have to parent you because your mom and daddy don't know how to parent you. I'm just being real. Teachers got a lot on their plate, and administrators too. Trying to make it happen, trying to do this with only this in your hand. It's hard. You go home and you're tired. You go home and you're aggravated. Don't even want your spouses to talk to you, and child, please go somewhere in the corner and sit down and be quiet because I don't need all of this. That's just the real. But I want you to know that I appreciate you. So when I draw my teachers and when I draw my administrators or principals, I'm putting them in the best clothes. I'm putting them with big happy smiles on their faces because you don't know. They done had their good cup of coffee. They done been taken out to breakfast and they were told they were going to get a raise. Hopefully they get that raise. You know, but those things are very, very important to me because I see you. I see people. I'm not seeing past you. I'm not just seeing that, okay, maybe you got a nice handbag and some money. Or that you're very, very handsome and you're suave and you know how to take care of yourself and you know how to run things. It's beyond that. I look past that and I'm looking at you, the person you, even the 5-year-old you, that needs healing, that needs just a moment. And if I can give it to you in a book or through a conversation, I hope that I put something in your spirit and in your heart that lifts you and makes you move forward. I see you. I see you in all the things that you do. The struggles and I don't know what I'm doing. Or I feel like I'm in imposter syndrome is going on or whatever. Or I'm not who I say I am. or when you're working with people who devalue you and devalue what you bring to the table, I see you. I see you. And I want you to know there is hope. Sometimes the hope doesn't come from other people. The hope is inside of you. And that's for you to see you. Sometimes we're looking for other people to look at us and to see us. And the person who really needs to celebrate you is you. What you bring to the table. The time it takes for you to get everything done and together. It's time for us to know our own worth and not look for other people to value us. Do you value you? At the end of the day, do you feel good about you? And sometimes it only takes one person to mess it up for you. And that's giving somebody too much power. Because he who angers you controls you. And that's the one thing that none of y'all need, is other people controlling you. I hope that we have a time where people can really do what they've been put on this earth to do. Whether that's to bring administration and direction to people, to show them what to do, to encourage them. You know what? This is what we all need to do to come together so that we can have some flow, so we can have a stream of creativity going through all of us to make this better. And so I, like I said, as a little small illustrator, you know, Charity told you all the things that I do, and I still see Vanessa as little Vanessa, 5 years old, just having fun. That's all. It's just that I care about people. It's how I was taught. It was what I saw my mother and father do when they would go and they would literally get bums. We called them bums back in the day. Bums or homeless people or drug addicts or just nomads. People on the street and bring them home. I remember my mother and father driving a big blue van. And I was a teenager and I was very embarrassed about how they would pick up anybody and everybody off the street. It was embarrassing. Really? All the kids said pick on me anyway at school, and now you're just giving them even more reason to pick on me. And she would bring those veterans home. And my mother would take their clothes out of the bags that they had and she would wash them in our washing machine. And not only that, she would feed them. And I mean feed them like they were kings and queens. You would think that there was Thanksgiving going on in my house every other day, the way my mother cooked for these people. And then she would not just cook for them, she would wrap up extra food and give it to them. And we didn't have no money, but she would take $5, $10 out of her purse. And she would try to give every last person the money that they needed. And I shook my head, I was like, I just don't understand. This don't make no kind of sense. But because my mother and father saw these people who served the United States, who did and worked, some of them, their husbands or wives, just lost them because they were mentally ill or whatever. And my mother and father would take the time to love on them, to bring them into our home, and it just caused me to see people in a whole different way. I'm not looking for everybody to be like Vanessa. That's not it. But I am certainly grateful for every person of color that has come through my door, that I've met, that I've had a chance to sit and hear their stories. Because it makes me a better storyteller. And I remember them and I celebrate them. And I look at people instead of looking through them. Looking at them because every last one of you matter. Every last one of you. And so I hope I said something to encourage you, to make you know I see you. I appreciate every administrator sitting at these tables. Every last one of you, because we can't do what we do without you. That's it. Can't do it. And so I'm grateful to every single one of you. Grateful to tears. Because I don't feel like you guys get what you deserve. You don't. You don't. But I want you to hear a great big thank you from me, a heartfelt thank you for all that you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Charity, for inviting me to speak. I hope again that I said something to encourage you and make you chuckle or make you smile.
Girl, you got me crying over here. There are a couple of tears in this room.
You got me in tears too. So.
Isn't she amazing? Right? She's amazing. If you haven't seen, I have some clips on the resource site. You can look her up on Amazon. You can go anywhere. Vanessa Brantley Newton has beautiful, beautiful work, but she as a person, as you know, she is a living embodiment of why we do the work that we do, and I hope that you found her as inspiring as I always do. So, thank you again, Vanessa.
Yes,
I'm
so-
sorry you got stuck in the waiting room land. I'll make it up to you, I promise.
I'm used to waiting room land. This is how we do. This is Zoom.
So, all right, so thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, okay?
Do the same. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.